Welcome to Conversations with Cox and Kielseth, and to be more specific, that is filmmaker Alex Cox and myself, film curator Pablo Kielseth. Alex will join us by phone from his home in Oregon, while I sneak away from my office to call him from one of the projection booths used by the International Film Series, which has been screening foreign and independent movies at CU Boulder since 1941. We will keep our chats to about 20 minutes as we discuss whatever movie-related topics grab our fancy. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, action.
And how are you?
I'm good, and it's so it was 2 weeks ago that we met, and unfortunately, as I detailed to you, my attempt at recording our in-person session, well, it resulted in
failure.
Loss. In failure. It was in failure, yeah. What I wanted to mention was that when we last met, you were here on the occasion of shooting a film. So I thought it'd be fun to maybe let people know what they can see you in when it comes out, to fill us in a little bit about that project that you were here for.
I was working for a film being directed by one of your colleagues, Jeff Marslet, who teaches production and screenwriting and acting and directing for the camera at CU, and in his spare time directs feature films. And he raised some money for, quite an ambitious acid western, would you describe it as? It's not all green screen, but a lot of it is green screen, and he is going to rotoscope over our characters and put us in these fantastical backgrounds or in models.
It's a science fiction western, right?
It's kind of a science fiction western, yes, and there's time travel in it.
Yeah.
It drifts back and forth between different times and yeah, it's very.
Does it have a title?
Does it have it's called title? Boarding House Reach. And it's going to end up looking very different from anything that I've ever seen, I think. But it won't be finished for about a year because it's going to take Jeff a long time to do and to organize all the visual effects.
He's got quite a cast of characters. It included David Arquette and some other folks, right?
I heard that David Arquette was very good in it, and also Gary Farmer, John Doe. Let me think. There were three actors that I had a scene with who are all very good. A guy called John Way, a woman called Lily Gladstone, and a young guy called Kiowa Gordon, who I thought was very good.
Excellent.
So it's a cool film.
I look forward to seeing it eventually when it comes out.
So do I, eventually.
Now, speaking of westerns, this is where I'm going to prod you for what I will say here. I hope the third time is the charm, and I really do feel that the ghost of
Henry Fonda hangs over this story,
has somehow attempted to keep you from telling this. So do you want to share with us one more time this what should be considered, I think, something that you will only hear here. All right, no one else knows this supposedly.
Well, some people know it. In the story that I was told was by a guy called Guillermo, who made a film, which you may have seen, about Sad Hill Cemetery.
Yes.
In Burgos, in Spain. And this is the last location of Leone's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Uh-huh. And they, a bunch of volunteers in the vicinity quite recently dug it all out and recreated it and put it back together so it looks sort of like it did when Leone shot there. And for €15 you can buy your name on one of the wooden crosses in the cemetery. And
not a bad price.
So that's pretty inexpensive, really, if you want your name on a tombstone. Yeah. It's the director of the documentary, this guy Guillermo, I met at the Almeria Western Festival, and he told me that when Henry Fonda was in Spain making Once Upon a Time in the West, while he was staying either in Guadix or in Almeria, he had an affair with somebody there. And then 9 months after he, did his work there and departed, a son was born who bore a striking resemblance to Henry Fonda, and who grew up and was a kind of a specialist in the Western towns, one of those guys who does gunfights, fist fights, falls off horses and stuff for the tourist trade. And has recently been in a couple of films, one of which was directed by this guy Guillermo, and another of which I think is a Russian film, which you can search on the internet, called Twice Upon a Time in the West.
These are recent movies.
These are recent movies, in the last couple of years, and they both feature this guy Jose Novo. Jose Novo.
How do you spell that last one? Is it just
N-O-V-O?
N-O-V-O, Jose Novo.
But his character name in both films is Pepe Fonda.
Oh, okay. So that's the
that
connection.
Apparently is his nickname. And in Twice Upon a Time in the West, if you even find the trailer of it online, they imitate the opening scene of Once Upon a Time in the West. Or rather, not the opening scene, but the one where the McBains are killed by Fonda and his gang. And there's a famous tracking shot around Henry Fonda to reveal his face. And they do the same thing with Jose Novo. So it's very knowing and interesting that this guy quite possibly is. He certainly, when they do the recreation of the Once Upon a Time in the West scene, he looks a lot like Henry Fonda.
The physical similarity is there, then.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you heard it here first, the story of Henry Fonda's Lovechild.
Presuming Henry Fonda doesn't somehow delete this third attempt at telling the story. Yeah, and now I think the other thing you were telling me last time is you were making some recommendations. You must have just seen some movies at some other festival. I don't think it was in Spain. Maybe it was closer to your.
Oh, I was the Loft. I went to the Loft in
Tucson.
In Tucson, which they have a very nice festival every year. And I was just at their festival, and saw a film called Deerskin.
Deerskin. That's right. I have it on my list, by the way, and I see that it's getting a proper release in March. So maybe I'll be able to tap into it for the spring calendar series in April, since I have to wait usually a little bit, but I look forward to it.
It's a killer film. I mean, it's very, very interesting. It's not, and it's in French, and it's just not the kind of thing you would expect to see. It's very, very entertaining.
It's the same director who did Rubber.
Yes, that's right.
A movie about a killer tire. And we've shown Rubber. We've also shown Wrong. That was another one of his movies. That was, I thought, very interesting. I remember seeing it for the first time at Sundance.
Yeah, I haven't seen either Rubber or Wrong. I've seen another film about a killer tire, but I think it was an Australian film from many years ago. Huh. Do you remember that? Or am I imagining that? Did I dream it?
No, that actually sounds like it might be right. Yeah. I'm surprised that you don't normally go for the horror films, though, do you?
I think we showed it on Movie Drone, maybe. Maybe that's why I know about it. And it's called Tire or something like that. Or
the horror film that I remember seeing with you that just comes to mind, was it the Car? Was that the one where there's shots that are taken in Utah, in the where we drove by on our way back from doing the Bill the Galactic Hero shoot?
That's interesting. Goblin Valley and around there.
Yes, it was in that area. Very nice scenery, and it makes
beautiful
a cameo. Yeah. In that movie.
Yeah, I remember the car was pretty good, wasn't it? It was an autonomous car which wanted to just murder people.
There was two. I tend to sometimes get them confused because there was that TV movie that was shot by Steven Spielberg.
That's Duel.
Duel, correct.
Now that's also a very good film.
Yeah, the theatrical version, which is longer than I think the film print that we screened is longer than what was normally shown on TV, and it really stands. It stands up. It's still a great movie. But
yeah, it is a great film. It's a very impressive.
But it's not
film
to be confused with The Car, which is I think spoiler alert, but I think that's the one that ends with the car being destroyed. But there's like a it almost looks like a devil's tongue in fire. I don't. It was an interesting shot, but yeah. Well, and speaking of cars, I seem to recall you said that you are you're going to no longer drive cars when you are what, 75?
That's no. I thought 70. I would aim for 70 because I think we're totally out of it, decrepit. By the time we turn 60. So by the time you're 70, nobody should be driving a car. I don't think.
You still got time. You're still firing on all cylinders. I think you're fine for a while.
Yes, we'll see about that.
Yeah.
But that's the recommendation. That's the best film, and the funniest and the weirdest film I've seen in a long time is Deerskin. What about you? What have you seen that you liked?
Well, I just yesterday finally managed to catch the Dr. Sleep movie. That's a sequel of sorts to The Shining.
Oh, okay.
I found it very off-putting when they, recreate scenes that took place back in 1980. But of course, you don't have Shelley Duvall or Jack Nicholson, so you have people who resemble them. And there's a scene at the end where Jack Torrance reappears, and he kind of looked like a fat Elvis to me. But I actually really liked the recreations of the Overlook Hotel in a sort of decrepit state. And just inhabiting that old decrepit hotel actually was I think my favorite part of the movie. I was surprised that it has not been, well, it has not done very well. It's actually been tanking at the box office. But it's an odd story. I tried reading the book and I didn't quite get into it. I got halfway through, and yeah, it doesn't hold me the way the original Shining, of course, does.
Well, you, I think, are more drawn to the original Shining, and perhaps this one because of the local connection, the Estes Park connection.
Yeah, perhaps. There's a little bit of that, of course, being in the backyard of the Stanley Hotel, which was one of 5 hotels that inspired the Overlook. It's kind of fun. And I've been to the one in Oregon, which is closer to you, that it's physically more based on. I'm trying to remember, what was your, I know that you're not for you The Shining is low on the list of the Strangelove films that you like. I think for you it's Strangelove.
Oh, Strangelove, 2001.
Yeah.
Barry Lyndon.
So here's a question for you before I forget. I was trying to remember the name. It might be in the book Command and Control that we both read, but wasn't there a Russian military agent who there was a false alarm back when the nuclear, I can't remember what year this would have been, but Russia and the U.S. were still very much toe-to-toe and aiming, just rattling their sabers and promising nuclear annihilation and all that kind of stuff. And wasn't there a Russian agent who, hypothetically, if he'd been following orders, could have started World War III, but he There are 2 instances of this, aren't there? There's one, and they're not Russian agents. They're like guys in the Russian equivalent of NORAD. The guys whose job is to keep watching the skies, for a sign of a sneak attack by the West. So there were two people.
So there were 2 different incidents. Well, I'm sure there were many incidents, but I can think there were a couple of them. One was a guy who decided it couldn't be true that the missiles were coming in, and it turned out it was something like the sun glinting off a cloud formation, an unusual cloud formation, had extended for miles, had emulated for the Russian radar the vision of missiles coming in. So that was one time that a guy in the system said, no, this isn't really happening. I don't believe it's happening, and didn't pass the message on. And the other time was the Able Archer NATO exercise in 1983, when the NATO ran through a very realistic simulation of starting a war with Russia, with the USSR as it then was, and the Russians, at a certain level, the Russian monitors took it seriously and thought that the West was about to launch a massive surprise attack on, or not if it was individuals or a computer decided that it was actually real. And again, somebody in the hierarchy said, no, I'm not going to pass the message on because I don't believe it.
So, but the name of that operation was Able Archer?
That was Able Archer, and that was in 1983, when Thatcher and Reagan were having a big war game.
And so the Able Archer program, that was a simulation.
It was Able Archer, it was an exercise.
An exercise.
Done by the NATO alliance.
Isn't it interesting that we can't remember the names of the people who might have saved the world at that point?
If you can do an internet search and find out their names. There are a couple of guys, and one of them, I thought they were making a movie about him with Kevin Costner.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, are you saying they almost made a movie, or is that still something that's going to happen?
I don't know. I read something about it, unless I dreamt it. I read something about Kevin Costner was going to play a guy who, one of these captains or colonels or whoever they were in the apparat, who said, no, I don't believe I don't believe the Americans have started the war.
Well, it's a great subject matter. I mean, that could be like another fail-safe type of movie in a way. So.
Yeah, it'd be a good story. I mean, I'm sure it would be very. I mean, a lot of people watch Chernobyl. I'm sure people are interested in these kind of thrillers.
You did not see Chernobyl.
I saw the last episode of Chernobyl. I didn't see the whole series.
Oh, you did? I'm surprised. I warned you not to watch at least the one episode where all the dogs get killed, because I knew that would really upset you.
I don't believe that story anyway. It doesn't make sense to me that they would actually, Well, I know it makes the Russians look bad, and that's the purpose of doing it in the first place, but I don't believe that story.
Well, I remember hitchhiking through Europe when Chernobyl was happening, and the warnings there were not to drink any milk.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, it's depending on who you listen to, the death count from Chernobyl, ranges from like 3 to like hundreds of thousands.
Right.
But no one. But I mean, it just depends on who's doing the calculating and what their agenda is, or.
Well, on that cheery note, we're at our 4:20 mark. I think it's funny that we that's when we should be stopping our podcast is at 4:20. We start at 4 o'clock Colorado time and end at 4:20.
That's right. Well, because we've got to get high again, man. I haven't got stoned for 20 minutes.
Well, there you go. So you can celebrate, and I'll get back to my Zonker Stout here from Snake River.
Yes, and I have waiting for me when the witching hour comes. I have a can of Yeti Stout,
nice,
which I found actually for not incredibly expensively in a local market. So that's very nice.
So you still have a connection to Colorado through the Yeti Stout.
I'm going to be connecting with Colorado at 5 o'clock this evening.
Excellent. Well, cheers to you, sir, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Look forward to it. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you, Jason.
Yep. Ciao.
Bye.
And cut. Okay, that's a wrap.
Thanks again for joining Alex Cox and myself today. I'd like to thank Jason Phelps for handling the audio and Ted Thacker for letting us use the intro to his song, The Ballad of Slim Cessna, for the musical cues that bookend these conversations. Don't forget to go out there and watch movies in a larger-than-home venue. It's what brings us all together to see movies the way they were meant to be seen, on the big screen, as we sit next to strangers, neighbors, and friends.